I want you to picture a quiet morning in Savannah, Georgia, where the streets are shaded by ancient oak trees draped with silver strands of Spanish moss, and the historic homes rest silently along the river. In that seemingly peaceful scene, a terrifying truth is unfolding behind the doors of a pristine white mansion. I am Linda Harris, 61 years old, a retired school teacher. I was sitting in the brand new living room of my own home, holding a cup of coffee, eyes locked on my phone screen. The security camera had just sent me footage of my daughter-in-law, Melissa, hunched over my front door, unlocking it with a key I never gave her. And she wasn't alone. A woman I had never seen before stood by her side. They pointed at details of the house as if it already belonged to them. And there I sat, frozen, my chest burning with a mix of cold dread and boiling anger. If you're watching this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and ask yourself, what could possibly drive a gentle mother like me to change every lock, hide cameras all over the house, and prepare a plan to strike back against my own son and his wife? Just 3 months ago, my life was completely different. After my husband's death, I received a large insurance payout, a chance to rebuild my future. I truly believed my son and his wife cared about me. They spoke kind words, pretended to worry about me living alone. But behind those sympathetic eyes was something darker: ambition. They didn't care about my loneliness. What they wanted was my money, my house, the very symbol of the life I was trying to piece back together. Have you ever wondered, when greed is dressed up in sweet words, how easily can a family become a trap? The story I'm about to share will chill you to the bone, because it's not just my tragedy. It's a warning to anyone who believes family ties could never betray them. 3 months ago, after my husband's funeral, I thought I was fortunate to have my son and daughter-in-law by my side. David, my only son, called often, asking about my meals, my sleep. Melissa, my daughter-in-law, visited with flowers and sweet advice. They told me I needed a fresh start, a bigger home so I wouldn't spend my last years in loneliness. I believed them. I truly believed it was love. But as you're about to hear, the truth was far more bitter. My husband's insurance payout was no small sum. The moment I carelessly mentioned it, I saw Melissa's eyes light up like fireworks. She suggested I invest in real estate, buy a beautiful house for the whole family. David nodded along, insisting his father would have wanted me to secure my future. At the time, I naively thought my children only wanted me to feel less alone. I didn't realize they were carefully plotting, step by step, to turn my money into their dream. Then I saw the mansion by the Savannah River. It looked as if it had stepped out of a classic novel. Sweeping balconies, winding wooden staircases, sun-drenched rooms. I pictured Christmas with the family gathered at the table, the sound of children's laughter echoing through the hallways. I decided to buy it, but something in my heart told me to keep it a secret. I purchased the house through a trust, hired a renovation company, and kept it hidden for weeks. The day I planned to share the news, I called David, excited beyond words. But he casually told me he and Melissa were out looking at a house. And then my heart stopped when I heard the address. It was my mansion. Melissa gushed about it, saying the small room near the bathroom would be perfect for me. Can you imagine? I had spent every penny I had saved, and in her eyes, I was only worth a tiny room in my own house. That's when doubt set in. Quietly, I started watching. I saw Melissa bringing friends over, pointing things out, measuring like she already owned the place. So, I decided to test them. I asked the management company to list the house again, pretending it was still for sale. The very next day, David called in a panic, saying someone else was making an offer, and if I wanted to help them, I needed to wire money immediately. At that moment, I almost laughed. They were staging a performance to push me into using all the insurance money for a house that already belonged to me. But it didn't end there. The security cameras revealed an even harsher truth. Melissa had a key, and she was trying to open my door. She wasn't alone. A strange woman, likely her mother, stood beside her. They talked about arranging the furniture, about turning the living room into their family gathering space. I sat in the dark, heart pounding, caught between rage and heartbreak. That lock, that key, they were proof of betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I called a locksmith to change every lock, then installed a brand new camera system. I swore that if Melissa dared to step foot inside again, she would learn who the true owner was. And sure enough, the next morning, the footage made my skin crawl. Melissa stood at the door, shoving the key in, but the lock wouldn't budge. Her face twisted in anger before she quickly called David. Together, they spun a new tale, worried about intruders, concerned for the safety of the neighborhood. But their lies only made me more resolute. I was ready. It was time to confront not just Melissa, but my own son, the one I had once trusted with everything. And I knew, whatever came next, it would change this family forever. That night, when everything had quieted down, my phone rang. It was David. His voice trembled, trying to sound calm, but the tension slipped through. "Mom, Melissa says something strange happened. Looks like someone changed the locks on that house on Riverfront Street. She thinks maybe a thief or some drifter broke in." I stayed silent for a few seconds, then answered evenly. "David, why does Melissa care about a house you two never bought?" The other end went quiet. I could hear his quick breathing, the shuffle of papers, like he was scrambling for an excuse. Finally, he muttered, "She just happened to walk by, noticed something odd with the door. She was only worried about the neighborhood." I gave a bitter laugh. I knew the cameras had recorded everything. No thief, no signs of trouble. Just Melissa, trying to force a fake key into my lock. The next day, I asked David to come over so we could talk face to face. I sat waiting in the living room, laptop open with the camera footage on screen. When he walked in, I didn't waste words. "Explain this. What is it?" I pressed play. The video showed Melissa shoving the key into the lock, her face tightening with frustration when the door refused to open. David went pale. He dropped into a chair, covering his face with both hands. His voice cracked. I didn't know Melissa had gone that far. But Mom, you have to understand we really need that house. You could live with us. We could be a family." I cut him off. "Family? Family doesn't sneak around with stolen keys. Family doesn't spin lies just to drain me of money. You plan to shove me into the smallest room of the house I paid for with everything I had." David choked up. "It was Melissa's idea. She thought if we told you outright, you'd never agree. She only wanted a fresh start for all of us." I looked at my son, torn between pain and fury. Part of me wanted to believe he had been dragged along, but another part saw his weakness, willing to turn a blind eye to his wife's schemes for the sake of his own gain. Later that afternoon, Melissa showed up too. Gone was her sweet demeanor. Her face was sharp, cold. She stared straight at me and said, "You kept it a secret. You bought that house to play power games, to make us beg. If you truly loved your son, if you cared about your future grandchildren, you'd hand it over. You can't live alone in a mansion that size forever." I replied, every word deliberate. "Melissa, I bought that house with the life savings my husband left behind. It belongs to me, and the truth is, you've made a grave mistake taking a key without permission, deceiving me, even trying to trick me into signing it over. Do you know what that's called? Elder financial abuse." The room went silent. Melissa froze, speechless. David kept his head down, unable to meet my eyes. I stood, closed the laptop, and said slowly, "From this day on, I won't let either of you control my life. You'll find your own place, your own future. I won't give another dime to your selfish schemes." When the door shut behind them, I knew that moment marked the end of an era. I had lost the illusion of family loyalty, but I had reclaimed my strength, and in the end, that was what truly mattered. In the days that followed that confrontation, my phone never stopped ringing. In the morning, David would call. In the afternoon, Melissa. Sometimes they even called together, switching between pleading and pressuring. Every conversation followed the same script. It began with gentle voices, subtle guilt-tripping, shifted into anger, then circled back to begging, even tears. "Mom, please reconsider. Melissa's pregnant. She can't sleep at night because of the stress. If we had that house, everything would be different. We just want the best environment for the baby." And hearing that twisted my heart. As a mother, as a grandmother-to-be, how could I not care about an innocent child? But I also knew David's words were a double-edged sword. They weren't just sharing joy, they were using family bonds as leverage, hoping to break me down. One evening, just as I set down my teacup, my phone lit up with a long message from Melissa. Her tone was different now. No more sweetness, no more circling around. Instead, it was a thinly veiled threat. "Do you realize, if we tell the relatives that you're hoarding all the insurance money and refusing to share with your family, you'll look selfish in everyone's eyes? You don't want them to turn their backs on you, do you? My hands trembled as I read each word. So this was Melissa's next move. When persuasion failed, she would smear my reputation. I took a deep breath, sat at my desk, and began saving everything: texts, call logs, camera footage. I didn't want to live only in anger. I wanted evidence, in case the law ever had to step in. A few days later, I walked into my lawyer's office. He listened carefully, nodded, then said firmly, "Mrs. Harris, what your daughter-in-law is doing qualifies as financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. If necessary, we can absolutely move forward with legal action." I nodded, though my heart was heavy. To sue would mean cutting the last thread of family. I wasn't ready for that, but I knew I had to prepare, because Melissa was growing bolder by the day. Sure enough, a week later, I saw her outside the mansion with her parents. They walked through the yard, pointing, chatting excitedly, marking out corners as if they had already claimed it. From behind the curtain, I watched with a heart that was both aching and cold. To them, I was nothing more than an obstacle standing in the way of property. That very night, David called again, his voice full of urgency. "Mom, we've made up our minds. One way or another, we're going to have that house. If you don't help, we'll find another way. But I don't want the family torn apart over money. Please, please just sign it over." "Is it at office?" I closed my eyes, a storm raging inside me. My son, the one I once believed would protect me now, spoke as if I were the barrier to his happiness. I stayed silent, letting the emptiness of the call stretch on. On the other end, David went quiet too, before hanging up. I knew then, the storm was far from over. This was only the opening act of a long, grinding battle where the line between family and betrayal grew thinner each day. And I, though heartbroken, would have to stand firm. Because if I didn't, everything I had left the house, and my dignity would be devoured without mercy. One rainy afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. His voice was low but firm. "Mrs. Harris, I've had my team dig deeper into Melissa's financial history. There's something you need to know. I have my noticebind in ass of his ride," and I froze as he spoke. 5 years earlier, Melissa's own family had pulled a nearly identical scheme, pressuring her grandmother into signing over her small home on the outskirts of Charleston. They used the excuse of protecting the property from nursing homes to convince her. Months later, the old woman was moved into a care facility, and the house was sold immediately after her funeral. I sat in silence, stunned. My worst fears weren't just suspicions, they were a replay of an old script. Melissa wasn't acting on impulse. She had learned the con from her own parents, and now she was repeating it with me. My blood boiled, but instead of rushing to act, I felt a cold strength spread the prive of rough me. I needed to turn the tables. That evening, I called David over to talk privately. As soon as he walked in, I laid a thick folder on the table in front of him, copies of the documents from his wife's grandmother's case. I looked him straight in the eye. "Do you know your wife pulled the same trick on her own grandmother? This is proof. This isn't just family drama. This is a pattern, a scheme." David opened the folder, flipping through the pages. His face drained of color. I saw his hands shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. He stammered, I didn't know. Melissa never told me." "My God," I sighed, but kept my tone firm. "David, I've been silent too long. I thought giving in would preserve our family. But the truth is, the more I give, the more they take. If you keep siding with your wife, I'll consider you part of this scheme too." In that moment, I saw the conflict in his eyes. He stood, pacing the room, then let out a heavy breath. "Mom, I need time. I don't know who to believe anymore, but if what you've shown me is true, then I can't defend Melissa." His words left me both relieved and heartbroken. I knew my son was torn apart between love and truth, but I also knew that if he didn't wake up, his whole life would be dragged into her web. Meanwhile, Melissa didn't back down. She called me over and over, leaving message after message, her tone sharper each time. Pleading turned to threats. "If you don't hand over the house, we'll sue you instead. We'll tell everyone you promised and then went back on your word. Who will people believe? A frail old woman, or a young family with a child on the way?" Reading those words sent a chill down my spine. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had evidence. I had a lawyer. And most importantly, I had the truth on my side. That night, I sat in the mansion's living room, staring out through rain-streaked glass. I knew the final confrontation was coming, and this time, I wouldn't just be fighting for the house. I would be fighting for my dignity to show Melissa that not everyone can be turned into prey for her greed. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. He was ready to file the lawsuit the moment I gave the word. But I knew before dragging everything into court, I needed one final confrontation. Not because I hoped for reconciliation, but because I wanted them to hear the truth with their own ears, leaving no room for denial. That evening, I invited both David and Melissa to the mansion. In the grand dining room, the chandelier cast light over the long, polished table. In front of them, I laid a thick stack of documents, every piece of evidence. Text messages, camera recordings, even the old case file from Melissa's grandmother. The air was heavy. Melissa kept her face cold, but her eyes darted nervously. David sat hunched, hands clasped tight. I looked straight at them, my voice calm but unyielding. This is the truth. I've been silent long enough. You plan to make me your next victim, just like her grandmother. But I won't let it happen. I'm prepared to take this to court, and I won't hesitate. Melissa shot up, her voice sharp. You're tearing this family apart over a house. We only wanted a better future for our children, I answered, each word like a hammer. No, you're tearing this family apart with greed. The house isn't the issue. The issue is the lies, the schemes, the way you used family as a weapon. That is what destroys the future of your children. The room went silent. David trembled, his eyes red. He whispered, Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong not to stop this sooner. For the first time in months, I heard truth in his voice. But it didn't erase the wound inside me. I stood, closed the folder, and declared, From now on, I'll live my life in this house, on my own terms. You will find your own way, carry your own responsibilities. This door will no longer open for lies. The next day, Melissa left town with her parents. David stayed behind, found a new job, and began the long work of rebuilding trust. We spoke on Sundays, sometimes awkward, sometimes quiet, but at least honest. As for me, I began a new chapter. I invited neighbors for dinner, joined the local widows' book club, and found small joys in tending the garden by my porch. The mansion was no longer a symbol of schemes, but a testament that I had chosen to stand strong, to protect myself from manipulation. I came to understand that family isn't always defined by blood. True family are the people who respect you, who stand by you without conditions. And the lesson I want to leave with anyone listening is this: set boundaries. Protect your assets and your dignity, even if the one betraying you is family. Because if you don't speak up, if you don't defend yourself, no one else can do it for you. And now, if you've made it this far, I want to ask, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you find the courage to stand up, to break free from manipulation, even if it meant confronting your own family? Share your answer in the comments. Your story might be the one that gives someone else the strength to realize they're not alone. And don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Here, we share real experiences, real lessons, so each of us can find our own strength. Because in the end, the most valuable thing isn't a house, it's peace in your heart. And that only comes when you stand tall and learn to cherish yourself.